In my previous life, Lord Du Minghao already had a beloved wife, Xing Yi. Because she could not conceive, his family accepted me as a second wife. On our wedding night, Lord Du Minghao made the terms clear. He took my body to fulfill his duty, then dressed and went to comfort Xing Yi. I was left alone to tend to my own bleeding, my own shame. My mother-in-law watched me like a hawk, demanding that I give the family a grandson as quickly as possible. Only Xing Yi offered comfort. Don't worry, Fei Yan. Once you are with child, you will earn mother's love. When I finally conceived, Lord Minghao spoke gentler. He posted guards at my door. He promised to return from the border before the birth. After a day and night of labor, I gave birth to a healthy son. Before my husband could return home, Xing Yi revealed her true face. Do you really think I couldn't become pregnant? Why would I risk ruining my figure when a fool like you could give birth for me? Cradling my newborn in her arms, she smiled and said, He's my son now. Your purpose in this family is over. Xing Yi chased me out of the Du residence. And to ensure it ended cleanly, she sent her brother to chase me to a cliff's edge. One push. That was how I died. But when I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on my wedding night. The same cold words fell from Lord Minghao's lips. I am afraid I cannot tonight, my lord, I said. It is that time of the month. Lord Minghao's eyes widened. I pushed him out. I saved myself for 3 nights. My father summoned me to the Zhang residence. His jaw tightened at the sight of my flat belly. Fei Yan, he said. Remember my instruction before you left? Obey, endure, earn your place. Why have I received a warning from Lady Du herself? She will shove you back here if you hold no value to them. My father was a middling district official who had not hesitated to trade his own daughter for a foothold among the elite. Now his plan crumbled, and he paced frantically before me. Worse, I would be returned in disgrace, and our family's reputation would be buried in mud. Father, I said. Even if I bear the Du family a son, they will never truly accept me as their daughter-in-law. Forget connection. They will use us both, then cast us aside. His pacing stopped. Intrigue flickered in his eyes. I convinced him to give me time to become Lord Minghao's beloved wife. In truth, I had only bought time. Time to plan my revenge against Xing Yi and the Du family. In both lives, Lord Minghao married me because Xing Yi willed it. Think of father and mother. Half the city whispers behind their backs because of me. I cannot even hold my head up before them anymore. They were childhood sweethearts. He was faithful to her, yet Xing Yi prized her beauty above her duties as a wife. She would not risk the swelling of pregnancy, the stretch of skin. I saw Xing Yi's maid, Yu Lang, personally tend to the tonic that prevented pregnancy. Xing Yi's younger brother, Mu Kong, had secretly supplied her musk bark, which Yu Lang mixed into the herbs Lady Du had the family physician prepare for us. When both maids carried the tonics into the room, Kylie deliberately tripped Yu Lang. The bowl flew and shattered on the floor. My apologies, my lady, Yu Lang said, bowing. How careless, Lady Du scowled, jabbing a finger at her. Heat rose to her face. Do you know how rare this herb is? I paid twice the market price to secure it firsthand. I lifted my own untouched bowl and turned to my mother-in-law and Xing Yi. It was partly Kai Li's fault. She wasn't looking where she stepped. Since Sister Xing Yi's tonic is spilled, why don't you drink mine instead? Kai Li prepares plenty for me every day. Xing Yi flustered. There's no need. I can drink it later. But mother-in-law had already seized the bowl from my hand. She pressed it gently into Xing Yi's palms. Xing Yi dear, you know this must be drunk daily for full effect. Come. Fei Yan can drink later. She patted Xing Yi's back. Their affection was lovely as birth mother and daughter. Even now, with my generosity laid bare, mother-in-law never bothered to look my way. Xing Yi had no choice but forced herself to swallow. She nearly choked on the taste. Kylie knelt to help Yu Lang clean the pool of liquid and shattered porcelain. My lady, Kylie murmured, this tonic smells funny. What are you saying? Yu Lang dabbed her sleeve to wipe away evidence, but Kylie caught her wrist and sniffed. It truly smells different from our tonic, my lady. I pulled Kylie aside. Mind your words. Mother had them prepared with the same herbs. It is your nose that smells funny. But perhaps Lady Xing Yi's tonic is more special than yours, Kylie whispered, just loud enough. Mother-in-law rose. How dare you? Are you saying I am biased? No, mother, I said quickly. We know little of medicines. Please forgive us. Xing Yi intercepted smoothly. We trust you are fair, mother. The maids know no better. Fei Yan and I will teach them properly. But mother-in-law insisted. She took Yu Lang's sleeve and sniffed, then my empty bowl. Her face darkened. Call physician Wu. Now. Beads of sweat formed on the physician's forehead as he examined both. These 2 tonics share the same base, he said, voice trembling. But Lady Xing Yi's contains a faint trace of musk. It is used to induce miscarriage. At one glare from Xing Yi, Yu Lang's knees hit the floor. Her hands clasped before her chest. Forgive me, Lady Du, she cried. I didn't know the bark had that effect. A street herb seller told me it was good for skin. I meant no harm to my lady. Lady Du's hand struck Yu Lang's cheek with a crack that echoed through the chamber. Skin tonic? You nearly poisoned the future heir of this house. She ordered Yu Lang dragged to the courtyard and flogged before the entire household. 20 lashes for the crime, 10 more for the lie. Xing Yi stood pale beside mother-in-law, her dark secret barely hung by a thread. Lady Du, blind with fury and desperate for a legitimate heir, had her own maid tended to Xing Yi's tonic. I watched Xing Yi's delicate fingers tremble against her robe. In my first life, Lady Du summoned me each dawn to interrogate me for pregnancy symptoms, her voice sharp, her patience thinner. The servants watched. I shuddered. Unlike me, Xing Yi was never questioned by our mother-in-law. Born and raised in the prestigious Guo family, a distinguished bloodline of scholars and ministers, she was untouchable. Mu Kong was the Guo family's illegitimate son. Xing Yi's obedient shadow. And the hand that pushed me off the cliff. But he was no true brother to her. She treated him worse than a servant. Exploited him because he feared of being cast into nothingness. The slap cracked through the garden like a dry branch. I paused behind the moon gate, watching Xing Yi's jeweled fingers strike Mu Kang's cheek with enough force to whip his head sideways. Useless, she hissed. The physician now watches my tonic like a hawk. Do you know what you've cost me? Mu Kong said nothing. It was not even his fault. He only bowed his head. Xing Yi swept past him, her silk robes hissing against the pebbled path. I waited until her footsteps faded. Then I approached. Mu Kong still stood there, one hand pressed to his reddening cheek. He startled when I held out my handkerchief, plain white silk embroidered with a modest orchid. For your cheek, I said quietly. He looked at me as if I had spoken in a foreign tongue. His eyes, I noticed, were not the cold stones I remembered from the cliff's edge. They were dark and startled. He did not take the handkerchief. I pressed it into his palm. His fingers were rough. They trembled slightly against mine. When I withdrew, his cheek had darkened further, not from the slap, I realized. His eyes followed me as I turned to leave, bright and confused. 3 days later, I found him waiting beside the plum blossom tree where I took my morning walks. He held the handkerchief between both hands. Lady Fei Yan, he said, stepping forward. I washed it. I wish to return. Mu Kong. The voice cracked like winter ice. We both turned. Lord Minghao stood at the garden's edge, dust still clinging to his traveling cloak. He had returned from the border 2 days early. His gaze moved from Mu Kang's outstretched hands to the white square of silk between them, then to my face. He was not supposed to look at me. I knew this. My lord, I said, lowering my eyes, you've returned early. Lord Minghao turned to Mu Kong, dismissing me entirely. Are you here to see Xing Yi? Mu Kong hesitated. His fingers drifted to his cheek. I am here to see Lady Fei Yan. To return this. His eyes found mine. Thank you for your kindness the other day, my lady. He extended the handkerchief. I reached, but Lord Minghao snatched it first. The silk crumpled in his fist. He assumed our exchange concluded, and his hand closed around my wrist without warning. I resisted. I glared at him, pulling against his grip. To my surprise, Mu Kang's hand shot out, stopping Lord Minghao's arm midair. Mu Kong, Lord Minghao said, his voice dangerously soft. What is the meaning of this? My apologies, brother-in-law, Mu Kong said, though his hand did not withdraw. This is not how one treats a lady. Especially one's own wife. Lord Minghao's jaw tightened. This is between Fei Yan and me. Know your place. The two men locked in a standoff. I had never seen Mu Kong defy Lord Minghao, partly from respect. The man had been a gentleman, treating Xing Yi with a devotion. Partly, I suspected, because Xing Yi would never have tolerated disrespect toward her husband. To see him stand there now, his shoulders squared, his palms still pressed against my husband's arm, it opened my eyes to something I had not planned for. I laid my free hand over Mu Kang's. He hesitated, then withdrew. His footsteps faded down the pebbled path. I turned to leave myself. My husband stepped into my path. Is this how you greet a husband returned from the border? I nearly retched. This husband who had not looked back at me when he left. Who had murmured his farewells to Xing Yi alone, his voice tender. Who had only ever pretended to care when I swelled with his child, who spoke sweet words I had been fool enough to believe. I gestured toward the eastern wing. Welcome home, my lord, I said. But you may wish to check on Xing Yi. The recent incident frightened her considerably. I expected him to bolt. To vanish into her chambers as he always had. He did not move. His eyes lingered on my face, searching as if he had not heard me correctly. Before I could repeat myself, he stepped closer. You are my wife, he said, his voice low and rough. Do not forget your place. I will not see you grow familiar with another man. Whoever he may be. My eyes widened. A warning? From the man who had showed me exactly how little my presence mattered. I watched his back as he strode toward the main house, the handkerchief still crumpled in his fist. Ever since that day, Lord Minghao began frequenting my courtyard. He would sit behind my chambers, drinking tea or reading, his words and stares remaining as cold as ice. In my previous life, I used to ache with envy over the tender words he whispered to Xing Yi. I had starved for just one soft look. But now I felt absolutely nothing. He always retreated before sundown, never staying the night. Yet, his eyes would linger on his way out, perhaps waiting for me to beg him to stay. I never did. One afternoon, Kylie brought over a bundle of kites, playfully hiding them behind her back to surprise me. Flying them used to be my favorite pastime. I stood in the courtyard tugging the string, but the kite refused to soar. After several miserable failures, I took a step back, pulling tightly, only for my head to bump against a solid chest. I whirled around and found my husband. "You can't even manage a kite," he teased. Heat rushed to my cheeks. I hadn't realized how long he had been standing there, watching me. Without warning, he took the string from my fingers. "Let me show you." He slowly let the twine slip through his fingers, and the kite soared into the sky. Once it steadied, he caught my hand to pass the string back. Standing directly behind me, his arms wrapped around my body, guiding my movements. Despite myself, my heart raced. The proximity felt dangerously familiar, evoking the phantom warmth of his touch from our past life. I forcefully shoved the memories away. "Do not trust him," I reminded myself. I tried to pull away, but his grip only tightened. "Where are you going?" he murmured, his lips brushing the shell of my ear. I swallowed hard. "I can manage now. You can let me go." "What if I don't want to?" I froze. Turning my head slightly, I met his gaze. His eyes were wide, glistening under the afternoon sun. "You have been keeping your distance. Are you perhaps shy?" Shy? He truly had no idea how much I despised him. "Can I come to your chambers tonight?" he murmured. I left for the border before we could consummate our marriage. I nearly dropped the string. Lord Minghao was asking for my consent? My fists clenched as the brutal memory of our actual first wedding night flashed before me. How had he changed so much? In my past life, I did everything right. I submitted to his every whim, yet he never treated me with a fraction of the kindness he showed Xing Yi. But in this life, now that I refused him, he was suddenly looking my way. Was it merely wounded pride? A game to win me over? I knew for a fact he had sworn to love only Xing Yi. The sound of rushing footsteps broke the spell. We turned to see Kylie sprinting toward us, with a thoroughly puzzled Mukong trailing close behind. Kylie had slipped away to find someone to help fly my kite, stumbling across Mukong instead. And his presence just allowed me a chance to get back at my husband. I shrugged out of Lord Minghao's embrace and gestured toward Mukong, who stood rigidly beside a panting Kylie. I challenged him to kite-flying duel with Mukong. Lord Minghao turned to me, his brow arched in curiosity. He scoffed. So I raised the stake. If he could beat Mukong, I would welcome him to my chamber. He agreed to my childish proposal. He snatched the spool of twine from my hands and thrust a second kite into Mukong's chest. Lord Minghao's kite soared first, steady and arrogant, writing thermals he read like battlefield maps. But Mukong's dipped and danced, erratic, and somehow the kite climbed, wild and beautiful, higher than his brother-in-law's disciplined arc. Neither went easy. I saw it in the sweat on Lord Minghao's temple, the grim set of Mukong's mouth. It was not a simple duel anymore. They were playing for pride. Mukong's kite caught a sudden updraft. It shot upward, trembling at the string's limit, a red diamond against the bruising sky. Lord Minghao's line went slack. His kite spiraled, caught in the downdraft of his rival's victory, and settled into the mulberry tree's branches. Kylie let out a joyful cheer, rushing over to congratulate a suddenly blushing Mukong. I smiled softly, basking in the small, hilarious victory. Lord Minghao stood frozen. He held the empty spool, his face darkening with intense, humiliating disappointment. He didn't look at Mukong. Instead, his burning, silent gaze locked onto me, heavy with a mixture of wounded pride and sudden, agonizing longing. "It seems the heavens have decided, my lord," I said smoothly, hiding a smirk behind my sleeve as I offered a polite, empty bow. "Have a pleasant night in your own quarters." I thought he would explode in anger. But his gaze softened into a mischief smile. "There's always next time," he said. Then settled beside me still. Heat warmed my cheeks. Because of our celebration, I failed to notice Xing Yi. Hidden behind the sweeping willow branches, she stood perfectly still. Her hands gripped the bark so tightly her knuckles turned white. And in that jealousy, the gentle mask cracked. She did not hate me for taking Lord Minghao. She hated that he had begun to look at me at all. But this life belonged to me. And my trap was already springing shut. Within weeks, the rumors whispering through the estate hallways turned into a reality Xing Yi was desperate to deny. She sat at her vanity, staring with horror at her own reflection. Pale skin. Bags under her eyes. The sudden violent wave of morning sickness that had her retching into a basin before dawn. She tried to hide it, desperately clinging to her perfect, slender figure. Before she could swallow her panic, the heavy doors to her quarters burst open. Lady Du marched into the room like a general storming a fortress. Behind her shuffled the trembling family physician, clutching his medical bag. "Mother, please, it is just a passing cold," Xingyi protested, her voice trembling as she tried to stand. "It's all right. Let the physician check," Lady Du said gently, but her eyes sharp as daggers. The physician pressed his fingers against Xingyi's wrist, feeling her pulse. The silence in the room stretched, heavy and suffocating. Finally, the old man bowed low, a wide smile breaking across his wrinkled face. "Congratulations, Madame Du. Lady Xingyi's pulse is slippery and strong. She carries a child." Lady Du's face transformed instantly. The strict, cold matriarch was suddenly overwhelmed with a frantic, suffocating joy. A child! The Du family bloodline. Xingyi froze, the color completely draining from her face. Her hands flew to her stomach. She wasn't supposed to endure the ugly, grueling reality of bearing a child. She was the delicate muse, the untouchable beauty. "Bring the black herbal tonics," Lady Du commanded, her voice booming with an aggressive level of care. She whirled around to her headmaids. "Ensure she does not lift a single finger. No walking in the gardens without my permission. And she will finish every single bowl of marrow soup I send down." Xingyi gagged slightly at the mere mention of the bitter tonics, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. "Drink it, Xingyi," I thought, a cold, dark satisfaction blooming in my chest. "Taste the bitterness. Feel your body change. Welcome to the living hell you built for me." Our mother-in-law ordered me to attend to Xingyi personally. It was a blatant insult, lowering my status from a secondary wife to a mere servant. Yet, I accepted the task with a submissive, willing bow. In truth, there was nowhere else I would rather be than right next to Xingyi, watching over that precious womb like a hawk. My sudden, absolute devotion caught Lord Ming Hao completely off guard. He would often look up to find me fanning his pregnant first wife or tending her tonic for hours. He mistook my relentless vigilance for genuine, selfless sisterly love. Day by day, his intrigue in me grew. Xingyi, frantically losing her grip, made one impossible, exhausting demand after another, testing my patience. One night, Xingyi's screech shattered the quiet of the dining hall. She slammed her spoon down, pointing a trembling finger at the steaming bowl before her. She claimed I had brought her a cold dish to upset her stomach. Lord Ming Hao's brow furrowed, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. "Xingyi, that is enough. Fei Yan had the kitchen prepare that specifically for your nutrition. You always defend her now." Xingyi burst out, tears of pure rage spilling over her cheeks. "You have had a change of heart, haven't you? You don't love me anymore. Just look at me. My figure is ruined, my face is swollen, and you can barely stand to look at me." "Sister Xingyi, please calm yourself," I urged softly, stepping forward. I didn't care about her insults, but I cared deeply about that womb. She could not miscarry yet, her torment had barely begun. "Think of the baby. My lord, please do not argue with her." But Xingyi was entirely consumed by malice. Snatching the heavy porcelain bowl from the table, she hurled it directly at my face. Before I could even blink, Lord Ming Hao moved with a warrior's instinct, throwing his body in front of mine to shield me. Smash! The bowl shattered against his cheekbone. Shards of sharp porcelain rained down on the floor, and a thin, crimson trail of blood began to seep down his sharp jawline. I gasped, my breath catching in my throat. "My lord! Your face!" I reached up to touch the wound, but he gently but firmly caught my wrist, refusing the help. His eyes were dark, burning with a cold fury as he looked at a horrified Xingyi. Without a word to her, he raised his voice. "Maids! Take Lady Xingyi back to her quarters. She is not to leave until she learns how to control her temper." Later that night, Lord Ming Hao came to my chamber. I had believed with every fiber of my being that once Xingyi fell pregnant, he would abandon me completely to dote on her. Yet here he was inside my room. I guided him to the chair. I dipped a clean cloth into warm water and gently dabbed the dried blood from his cheekbone. "You should have let the physician look at this." "It is just a scratch," Lord Ming Hao replied. He looked up at me, his eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight. "I came to apologize for Xingyi's behavior today. You did not deserve that. She is just sensitive right now. And I came to say goodbye," he added quietly. My hand froze against his cheek. I looked at him, confused. "An express decree arrived from the imperial court tonight," he explained, his jaw tightening slightly. "Rebellion has broken out. I am summoned to the northern border. I march at dawn." A sudden violent wave of unease crashed over my mind. The northern border. In my past life, I remembered the rumors of how brutal and bloody that specific campaign had been. A strange, unsettling panic gripped my chest. "Tomorrow?" I whispered. "Yes." He stood up slowly, his eyes lingering on my face for one last, heavy moment. "Take care of yourself while I am away, Fei Yan." He turned to leave. Before my mind could even process what I was doing, my hand shot out. My fingers wrapped tightly around his wrist, stopping him in his tracks. I froze, staring at my own hand. Why was I holding on to him? I was supposed to despise him. But Lord Ming Hao did not wait for me to pull away. Turning back instantly, he stepped into my space and pulled me flush against his chest. His arms wrapped around my waist, holding me securely against his solid warmth. The embrace wasn't rough or demanding. "I want to hold you tonight," he whispered. I did not reply. But my arms wrapped around his back tighter. Safely tucked against his heartbeat, a terrifying thought pierced through my resolve. The husband I had sworn to hate was starting to feel like a man I wanted to keep alive. Under the guise of a dutiful sister, I began whispering poisonous praise. I blurted out how immensely important Xing Yi had become now that she carried the Du heir. "Soon, you will naturally inherit the keys to the estate. You will eventually become the next true Lady Du." The words acted like a drug on Xing Yi. Trapped in a changing body and choking on bitter tonics, she found a sudden, dangerous euphoria in my words. She began to believe her own hype and began openly defying Lady Du's strict commands. The boiling point arrived during a grand opera performance. Lady Du sat proudly among her high society peers, sipping tea, when Xing Yi suddenly paraded into the audience. Horrified by the public spectacle of her pregnant daughter-in-law flaunting herself, Lady Du hissed for her to return home immediately. But Xing Yi, high on her own perceived power, refused to bow. Instead, she laughed, her voice carrying across the pavilion for every noblewoman to hear. "I can go wherever I please, mother," Xing Yi announced coldly, tilting her chin up. "You have no authority over me anymore. I carry the next heir of this house. Very soon, I will claim my rightful place as the true lady of this estate, and you will have to ask me for permission." The public humiliation was total. Lady Du's face flushed a violent crimson. Shaking with a mix of embarrassment and blinding rage, the matriarch dragged Xing Yi out of the theater and back to the estate. The moment they crossed the threshold, Lady Du erupted. She ordered the guards to lock Xing Yi away in the eastern courtyard. But Mu Kong stepped forward. Driven by his absolute duty to protect his sister, the stiff man drew his blade, standing like an immovable wall between the guards and Xing Yi. He refused to let a single soul touch her. Behind his massive frame, Xing Yi stood, her lips curled into a victorious, mocking smirk. Lady Du could only stand and watch. She knew she could not push any further. To make matters worse, Xing Yi's birth mother, a woman hailing from an immensely powerful, untouchable household, began paying frequent visits to the estate to check on her daughter. That evening, the proud, formidable Lady Du completely broke down. Weeping bitter tears of fury and regret, she fell into a chair and grabbed my hands, wailing at the top of her lungs. "I was blind, Fei Yan. I gave that ungrateful viper everything, while you have done nothing but serve this family. I regret ever being kind to her." I knelt beside her, lowering my eyes to hide the cold, dark satisfaction gleaming within them. I squeezed her trembling hands, playing the part of the comforting daughter-in-law perfectly. Everything was unfolding exactly as I had anticipated. All except Mu Kong. Under Xing Yi's strict orders, he was trying to pour toxic musk powder into the pot. "If that womb is emptied, your sister will lose her last shred of protection in this house," I whispered, staring directly into his trembling eyes. "She will be cast out. And you? You will have murdered your own unborn nephew. Do you truly want that child to be discarded and forgotten?" The words struck his heart like a dagger. As an ignored, unloved, illegitimate child, the thought of killing a baby broke his spirit entirely. Terrified of his own actions, Mu Kong dropped the powder and fled the estate that very night. Xing Yi's last loyal soldier was gone. Left entirely alone, Xing Yi's sanity began to fracture. She could no longer stand the sight of her own bloated, changing figure. Whenever she walked down the street, she mistook the polite bows and quiet whispers of people as cruel mockery of her appearance. She began snarling at passing strangers, screaming at the maids, and throwing violent tantrums at the mere mention of her weight. Finally, the despair won. Hating her body and terrified of the world, Xing Yi locked herself deep inside her darkened bedchamber, refusing to see a single soul. She was a prisoner of her own mind. I marched straight to the grand windows and threw them wide open, letting the blinding sunlight invade her sanctuary. "Stop! Close it!" Xing Yi shrieked, shielding her pale, swollen face. I didn't move. I stood in the light, looking down at the hollow wreck of the woman who had once been the city's ultimate beauty. "Look at what this place has done to you, Sister Xing Yi. Look at how this pregnancy has broken your body and mind." Xing Yi screamed, her eyes bloodshot with pure malice. "I'm not supposed to be like this. You are." I stepped closer to her bed. "Am I? Tell me, out of all the girls in the capital, why did you choose me as your puppet in the first place?" Xing Yi froze, her eyes widening in horror as she realized I knew her secrets. A hysterical, ugly laugh erupted from her throat. She couldn't help but brag about her masterstroke. She confessed everything in a rush of spite. How my father was a desperate man who traded me for a mere government position, and how she had whispered my name to Lady Du to arrange the match. "You were nothing but a breeding animal to me," she spat, her face twisting with arrogance. The same posture when she had stood above me in my past life, revealing how she had plotted to take my son in the end. She laughed, expecting me to break. Instead, I let out a soft, mocking chuckle that cut her short. A brilliant plot, I hissed, leaning down until our faces were inches apart. But you forgot one detail. Your plan failed because I rewrote it. Did you truly believe everything from the beginning was an accident? Xingyi's breath caught in her throat. The laughter died instantly. I knew every word of your game. And I turned the tables. I am the reason you are carrying that child. I am the reason your precious figure is ruined. You wanted to steal my child? Instead, I forced you to bear your own nightmare. The realization struck her like a lightning bolt. The fact that she had walked blindly into my trap completely shattered what was left of her mind. No. You lie. Xingyi shrieked, clutching her head and tearing at her hair. Within days, her sanity fractured completely, leaving behind a raving, broken madwoman. Terrified of the public shame, her powerful birth family quietly packed her into a sealed carriage. They dragged her away to the secluded Guo family estate, praying she would regain her health. Just as the dust settled, a devastating news arrived that Xingyi had suffered a miscarriage. The tragedy shattered Lady Du, plunging the household into deep mourning. But the true danger emerged from the shadows. Mukong found me alone in the courtyard, his eyes dead and hollow. I had severely underestimated his deep-rooted loyalty to his sister. He wasn't acting on Xingyi's orders this time. He was seeking purely personal vengeance. To him, Xingyi was the only person who had ever acknowledged his existence, while the rest of the world treated him like an invisible bastard. I tried to reason with him, but his soft heart had turned to stone. Before I could call for help, he lunged forward, plunging a hidden dagger deep into my stomach. I'm sorry, Lady Fei Yan, he muttered. I believed you were kind to me. I believed you were different from the others. But in the end, you just used me to get back at Xingyi. She fell into despair because of you. I can't forgive you. As the cold steel pierced my skin, a terrifying realization washed over me. In my past life, it was also Mukong who had cornered me and forced me off that cliff. I thought I had changed my destiny. But as the world began to blur, a crushing despair gripped my heart. I had failed to escape my fate. At the absolute last second, the courtyard doors burst open. Lord Minghao sprinted into the light, his face pale with horror. With a fierce, blinding strike, he kicked Mukong away and barked for the guards. Mukong didn't even resist as the soldiers dragged him to his knees. Instead, he looked at my bleeding form with a heavy wave of apology in his eyes. Fei Yan, Lord Minghao called. Fei Yan, I'm back. He fell to his knees, scooping my weak body into his trembling arms. He held me tightly against his chest. In that desperate, breathless moment, he confessed that he had fallen deeply in love with me, a roaring passion he had tried so desperately to fight but could no longer deny. Perhaps he did love me in our past life. Perhaps he had rushed over to me at the news of my labor. He just arrived too late. Clinging to his warmth, I finally let my own walls crumble. With what little strength I had left, I whispered the truth. I loved him too. The heavens were finally merciful. I did not die. The dagger's blade had missed my vital organs, and a miracle followed. The physician revealed that I was pregnant, and the tiny fetus inside my womb had miraculously survived the attack. The news sent a thrill of absolute joy through the Du family. My impending child elevated my status to heights I had never imagined. I earned the absolute, unwavering respect of my husband and his family. Even Lady Du, completely humbled by the near loss of her entire line, vowed never to force her strict methods on me again. The final piece of healing arrived. A tearful message of congratulations from my father, who finally saw his daughter as someone to be cherished. Looking out over the peaceful courtyard where my husband now held my hand with fierce devotion, a profound sense of gratitude washed over me. My second life had been a brutal battlefield. But I had fought for myself, I had vanquished my enemies, and in the arms of the man who truly loved me, I had finally rewritten my fate.